According to the computer. Okie dokie.
Good afternoon.
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Professor McKellar, for coming on. Everyone, this is Dr. Dannah McKellar Ntaka. She is going to share with us today some valuable tips on how we can advocate for ourselves when we are in various stages of healthcare, also for our family members or those we might be taking care of. But I thought it was very important to have her on today to share her wealth of knowledge, the amount of commitment and work her organization, the Campus of Care, has been doing to advocate for, take care of, provide for women of color and those in disenfranchised communities to help us to survive and also to thrive in these times. And so, with no further ado, I will let her share anything else about her biography and background that she would like to. So again, we just want to say thank you and welcome, Professor McKellar.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here. And to your audience, I want to let you know that my background is in public health and clinical research. I've spent the past 30 years working at the intersection of pelvic anatomy and physiology, which is simply function, and microbiological diseases such as the human papillomavirus, that's HPV, that causes cervical cancer, as well as the Zika virus. As a medical scientist, I am mostly concerned about health outcomes. We have treatments, we have designs for developing new therapies, new devices, new drugs, and I am concerned about outcomes. Since I was about 8 years old, when I learned about the Tuskegee experiment, I said to my mom, if I am in those rooms, then we won't have issues with unethical studies. So I didn't really know all the terms at the age of 8, bioethics and surveillance and oversight, but I now know, and that's what I do for a living.
Yes, and for those who may be unaware of what the Tuskegee experiment was, could you share that?
Yes, I will. There has always been a lot of ambiguity surrounding why the Tuskegee syphilis experiment was wrong. For a period of 40 years, Black men were allowed to walk around in Tuskegee, Alabama with syphilis. So think about this in terms of fathers being intimate with their wives, girlfriends, side pieces. Just think about everyone in that circle that may have been involved. And when those men went into other clinics because they thought they were not being cared for properly, their name was on a special list and they were sent away. So this study was deceptive in that they were being told that they were being treated when in fact they were getting a placebo, whether that's a water pill or a sugar pill. It's something that makes you think that you are being treated. But again, these men knew that they were not. And so for 40 years, scientists in the National Public Health Service were able to collect data to see exactly how bad syphilis could be. That's how we know that if a baby is born to a mother with syphilis, that they can become blind. So it was blown out of the water by Rolling Stone magazine. And I'm dating myself, but back in 1974, I was 8 years old, and I was both stunned and perplexed and set on a mission. I always knew that I would be in healthcare, but sexual health and reproductive medical research became my focus after that.
Ooh, yes, thank you. I think we hear that term and it feels like a dark cloud, which it is, in terms of what our forefathers came through as African American men. So the fact that you were touched by that has always spoken to me, that at such a young age you had the discernment to really understand the breadth of this issue and how impactful it had been to our community. in such a negative way, and also impacting us in terms of our lack of trust of the healthcare system, sometimes to our own detriment, but with likely, with a reasonable cause to have that doubt. So anyway, I just always want to make sure that we're on the same level and people really understand what exactly we're referring to. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was already engaging in systems thinking because my father is a retired minister, retired English teacher. My mother is a retired nurse practitioner. And the Black church is a place that we have always found refuge. But the people who designed that, the can't even get it out, the Tuskegee study
Yeah.
used the Black church as a place to recruit. So I took that personally, being that my dad was a minister and my mother was a nurse. That could have been in Texas. That could have been Smith County, where I grew up. So I did take Tuskegee personally, and it has shaped my life in many ways. As you have mentioned, the distrust, the mistrust, it is well earned. But researchers like myself are here to bridge that gap between a system that has not always had our best interest at heart. We want you to see that when researchers like us come around with a clipboard and we ask you to participate in a study, that you know this is someone who is ethical and who really has your best interest in mind.
Understood. So, in addition to the Tuskegee experiment, we know now that there are a large percentage of Black women who disproportionately are dying during childbirth. These are things that were expected, right? Maybe 100 years ago, we didn't have the technology, the knowledge really of what childbirth entailed, what the stress was on the body, and how we should fortify women to survive that. But to be in 2026 and still have much higher rates of infant mortality and maternal mortality through childbirth seems very strange. Can you talk a little bit about what causes this and why we still have such high numbers of Black women dying during the childbirth process?
Sure. In public health, maternal mortality, morbidity, that's our wheelhouse. So if I can explain it this way, the maternal mortality rates are decreasing in other countries, but in America, they are continuing to increase. And you mentioned that it might sound strange, number one, because America purports itself as a great superpower, as a place of scientific discovery. But the one thing that we have not fully grappled with in America is our legacy of slavery, our legacy of bias. And I'm taken to task about this quite a bit, but I like to go back to what was the role of the Black woman prior to emancipation?
Mm,
Slavery did not just end in one fell swoop. And I'm taking us on the long walk through the park. And
mm,
if you just follow with me, slavery didn't end in one fell swoop. There was an issue of slaves on the continent being more expensive than slaves here in the country. So think of slavery in terms of a business and not just a heinous system. So I'm an entrepreneur. You have had several entrepreneurial ventures. Think about our cost. So the cost of an imported slave was more. So the first thing that happened was slavery was the importation of slaves was outlawed. Right then and there, that made the job of the Black woman on the plantation to become a factory. By the time you were 13 or 14, you were already expected to be birthing, getting ready to give birth. So that's just, let's keep that in the back of our minds. And then let's come forward to
mm.
bias in healthcare, unconscious bias, where you don't know that you don't like Black women, or you don't know that you are annoyed to see Black women in the clinic, or conscious bias where maybe you do know. So, when people are in childbirth, there are a few reasons that they can run into a critical care area. If you have hypertension, there's preeclampsia that goes into eclampsia, and the woman can have seizures and then die. But one of the more common reasons in the mechanics of birth is hemorrhaging, bleeding. We've heard the story
Mm,
about Kyra, who's the was the daughter-in-law of Judge Hatchett, and you know her husband who has for Kyra for moms. We know about Serena Williams, and the cases are just ongoing. And the one thing that is so interesting about bias in American healthcare is that as a Black woman, your socioeconomic status does not preclude you or prevent you from being a victim of this maternal mortality crisis. So
mhm.
it is multi-layered, it is multi-pronged, but we know it, we can name it, and there are several teams of people, the OBGYNs, the doulas, the researchers, the community advocates. In our company, we have Men for Mothers, that if you know that you have a car service and you know that there is a woman who may be a stay-at-home mom, or her husband may work an hour away, or if maybe she's a single mother, that if we can just get back to taking care of each other the way we did in the 40s through the 70s before everybody got their fancy job and moved so far away from our support system where we didn't actually need each other. We do need each other, and we can continue to reduce this maternal mortality rate as a group, as a unit, multidisciplinary, multi-layered.
Yes. Just so much information. And
That
no
was a
matter how
lot.
hard I try, it just always wells something in me, wells
Okay.
up in me. Just when we think about those who came before us, when we think about our grandmothers, people that we actually can touch or touched, our great grandmothers, all within less than 100-year period of time we're talking about. So these are not just like people in a history book that we didn't have direct access to. Definitely grandmothers, great grandmothers, at some point in our lives, whether we were infants or young, we were in relationship with these people. And so
Yeah.
they are a part of us. Their DNA is a part of us. We'll have to have another discussion about Dr. Joy DeGrey, who
Yeah.
talks about the impacts of trauma on us as a people, within our DNA, et cetera. But I'm always solution oriented, and so I definitely want to move to that in a few. But I just am trying to make sure that I give a good picture of what has been going on. So aside from the Tuskegee experiment, aside from having our bodies used as commodities, without regard to how it made us feel. Even within the field of medicine and learning about the female body, the human body, we were sacrificed or used as experiments. People go through great lengths now to protest animals being used for research, but retrospectively, I'm wondering, was there even really an era where people protested as vehemently for human bodies that were sacrificed to teach about the body?
Absolutely. You raise great points, and we did cover a lot, and we will certainly have to come back and revisit
Yeah.
small portions at a later time. But J. Marion Sims is considered to be the father of American gynecology. And he trained at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. He's from the South Carolina area. And there are times that when I really look, it was the young Black ladies and gentlemen who protested, especially the young Black ladies who protested his statues in New York. They went sometime during the pandemic with the gowns on, with the red paint to show that he had a lot of blood on his hands. Again, thinking like a business person. J. Marion Sims was, in a sinister kind of way, a brilliant businessman. We know that slavery was a negative legacy, but it was the law. And he came up with a plan whereby a rectocele and all of the surgical techniques that he used on slave women, three in particular,
Mm,
he would make the hair stand up on the back of the neck, so to speak, of his young white surgical assistants, so much so that they were not able to even witness him doing the techniques and repairing these tears. So if you can imagine your pelvis and the baby's coming down the birth canal, the baby's head is a hard bony structure. The woman's pelvis is a hard bony structure. So if you get a portion of your uterus, or if you get a portion of your bladder or your rectum, your intestines caught between those two hard bony structures, and the body is pushing forward with
mm,
contraction, pushing forward down the labor canal, the birth canal, that is going to be causing a problem. So the women in slavery were either leaking feces or leaking urine 24/7. So they really weren't able to have a job as a seamstress or out in the field because it was socially unacceptable to be around them because they had a body odor. So on the one hand, they wanted to be helped, and we can't deny that. But on the other hand, we do know that anesthesia was available. That was later reserved for white women when Sims had perfected his techniques. But those women who had those particular anomalies, they were they were not in great number. So he was embarking upon an area that was rare, and he really had to preserve those women. I'm trying to think like his
yeah.
white male entrepreneurial mind, that when those women were in his care, they were technically his property. So contracts were signed. This is a total business arrangement. If he had used anesthesia that was still very new and one of those women had died, they couldn't get it titrated properly, he would have had legal liability.
Mm,
So I am not at all making an excuse for him, but Albert Einstein taught us that when you have a problem, just like you squeeze a puzzle piece, you turn that puzzle piece around and you look at it all of the different ways until you can resolve that problem. So this is a complex issue, and we certainly will have to come back and revisit this. I can talk about this until the cows come home because this is what I do.
yes. I love your knowledge and the history, and your passion about it
Mhm.
as well. Okay, so you know what? Let's talk about move towards solutions. So tell us about the Campus of Care. Give us a little bit about what your impetus was to start it. I think I have somewhat of an idea, but what were the kind of bones of that, and when did you start Campus of Care, and what services do you provide?
Excellent. The Campus of Care Global Healthcare Corporation was founded in 2005, the week that Hurricane Katrina was happening. I'm looking at the news with our team. I had already planted the Philly International Advocates for Women, and that company was kind of merged and rolled into the Campus of Care. We have five pillars that we currently work on. We train the public, we train healthcare workers. One of our main pushes to deal with bias in healthcare is to have more clinicians of color. That's the OBGYN physicians, that's nurse practitioners, that's physician assistants, the lab technologists, the EKG techs. We want to have more people in the hospital setting in all areas of allied health who look like us. And that way that they could be able to understand that system and deal with some of the biases. So we are out here at the grassroots level. We're training in particular midwives and doulas because the World Health Organization has stated that the maternal mortality rate can be reduced if everyone has a well-rounded birth team. And you may see on social media the all-Black birth teams, the physician, the nurse practitioner, the physician assistant, the doula, everyone is a person of color. And that is getting better outcomes. So we are boots on the ground training.
Sorry, I'm looking away because I'm taking
That's
notes so
okay.
much. I'm like, I don't want to miss anything. Okay. Better outcomes is excellent to hear. Um, Let's see, have a lot of family members in the healthcare community, particularly
Wonderful.
EKG, particularly nursing, and particularly maternal nursing. So,
Excellent.
as well as some friends who are doulas. So I am happy to hear that there's a place for them and that the awareness has increased. I did become aware of the um, low numbers or I guess lack of attention to Black women with issues actually conceiving. And so unfortunately, I do have some friends who also have had difficulty with conceiving and are part of a community working on that. So we kind of have those areas covered. Um, but one of the things that impressed me about the campus of care is how you literally support women who are, during their pregnancies, afterward to make sure that, postpartum is dealt with and things like that. So just give us a little bit about kind of those specific services and
Yeah.
what that really looks like in the communities you serve.
Excellent. We do have a boutique style company where I believe it was Mother Teresa who said that if you can't feed 100 people, then just feed one. So we take 1 to 4 women per year and we follow them definitely for the 1 year because that's kind of a magical number. If we can get moms to the baby's 1 year birthday, we have maternal mortality crisis that we measure at the 42nd day. And then there's another measure that goes up to the 365th day of the child's birth. So we cover our moms at least 1 year. That's why we don't take on 25 or 30 moms. And then there are some that we're following to 3 to 4 years to make sure that their social determinants of health have been taken care of. Do they have access to good food? Many people live in food deserts. Do they have an improvement in their career? What is their family structure like? Many of our moms are from the diaspora. They may be Jamaican, they may be West African, and maybe they're married, but their husbands are working double shifts, so they still may seem like a single mother at times. And I'm kind of intrigued by the fact that when we go to a mom's house today, everyone's kind of going like a spectator, like we're waiting for someone to serve us juice or fruit.
Mm.
And our grandmothers and our mothers and aunties used to get up and do the work. So the doula has definitely, the postpartum doula in particular, has taken on that role. And I am quite partial to that postpartum period that we call the fourth trimester.
Awesome. Okay. The fourth trimester. And what areas, which states do you do serve?
Great question. We serve Dallas, Texas, which is where our international headquarters has moved to back in 2018. And our home area is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So the one thing I think that you will find interesting is that we have subdivided America into 6 regions so that we
Hmm.
operate very much like a sorority, where we are taking our concept, our intellectual property, the protocols that we have written to different regions and teaching people in the area so that they branch outward. We can't technically be everywhere, but we can have a headquarters all over the United States in 6 different areas, and we can train a regional director of sorts and to teach our techniques to those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of forthcoming, forth looking, and our ultimate goal, we have had maternity houses for over 2 decades. Our ultimate goal is to find some land and to be able to build our cottages. We're not housing women every day the way we used to as I get towards a magical age where we don't want to do hands-on
Yeah.
management, but we would like to have a place for moms to come for 3 weeks to a month. And we would
Mhm.
also like to have a part of that land for the clinicians to come and
Mm.
to be healed when they are feeling excessive burnout from this work. That is really more than a paycheck. This work is really a life calling.
Mm. Ooh, yeah, that is a great quote. And a great sentiment. No, it is a life calling for sure.
Thank you.
What have you been successful with any partnerships? I mean, as you mentioned, organizations like sororities, we think about organizations like NAACP or the Urban League or um, actually even the Red Cross or things like that. Have you been able to form any synergies with those entities?
Yes, actually, we have with the American Heart Association, which is where many of us are trained. One of our initiatives, the public health initiatives, is for everyone to be certified with CPR. Because through bias in healthcare, we know that the EMTs don't make it into the Black neighborhoods sometimes as fast if they may be feeling fearful.
Hmm.
And there are many articles out there in the research literature about people who make it into the homes and the care that they give
Mm.
to a Black grandmother may not be the same as they give to someone else. So it ties back to that unconscious bias. But our partnerships have mainly been Black churches of all
Hmm.
sizes, especially the mega churches in Philadelphia, the Black clergy in Philadelphia individually and in groups have supported our work. And we are looking to continue to make more alliances and allegiances with other organizations.
Yeah, and they would be lucky to have you. I think this is just so important, and it really has impacted a lot of lives. I have so many questions. I'm trying to keep myself focused.
Take your time.
I
I'm here.
okay. Anyway, kudos to you all, your team, and the amount of work. I know the amount of work that goes into it. I've witnessed some of it, and just appreciate it very much. It's even opened up my eyes to things to look for. And even in my everyday life now, I do work to advocate for patients, and even in past positions, though I'm in technology, um, that has really informed how I design websites as I worked with clients in many fields like sickle cell,
Yeah.
um, breast cancer, just many areas of pathology or illnesses, that are ongoing and also fatal in many instances. But how those patients are handled has just been kind of something that has been a passion for me to advocate for those people. So in a second, I do want to get to like how we can empower ourselves, like as patients going to the doctor, what are the questions we should be asking? So we're going to touch on all that in a
Yes.
second. I wanted to lastly ask about the campus of care, what you would like your legacy to be, the legacy of the campus of care as it goes on. Um, my hope would be that it would be adopted and carry on long after we're not here anymore. But that may not be your vision. What do you envision as the legacy of campus of care?
For me, I envision scholarship and publishing. One of our mantras as clinical researchers is publish or perish. So when I look at what people do after retirement, whether it's going to the beach, certain careers, you don't really get a chance to retire as such. You have an obligation to continue to publish. So every week I am writing a minimum of one article, sometimes two. And I've mentioned this to you privately that I have one that is highly technical with APA style 7 references for high level journals. Then there's a middle of the road journal article for the Campus of Care's own publication, which is the Maternal Fetal Voice. We feature the local physician, the local clinician, so that you can hear from people that you know in your own community and in the global community. And then the third revision of that article is one that's like a 1 to 2 page for the public that can be converted to a PowerPoint presentation. But it's something that we want to hand out, and we do hand out like religious tracts. Believe it or not, there's something that we call the public health doctrine. And it's public health is a lot like religion. So you might see us out handing out tracts just like religious people do. But our doctrine says that if the least among us are healthy, kind of sounds like Jesus, then we all have great health. So that is our legacy, is making sure my personal goal is to be as effective and productive of a scholar as W.E.B. Du Bois, who left us with over 2,000 articles. So that's a whole lot of work to do.
Absolutely. And I am very much looking forward to you presenting at ASALA, which is which is Carter G. Woodson's organization. But
Wow.
the point of ASALA, African American Studies of Life and History, is to allow for the layperson as well as the
Yeah,
scholar to
that's right.
contribute, because as we know in our community, we have many griots who may not have the degree behind them, but they have a wealth of knowledge to share. And the fact that he understood that at that time, and it has carried on his legacy for almost 100 years now, that we will, continue on in that vein. Because again, we always have had to empower ourselves. And of course, I espouse this support for the Black community, but as we know, when the Black community in America thrives, or when wrongs are corrected, they're corrected for everyone. And so
That's
we
right.
are able, the work we do benefits everyone as a collective. And so it's very important to American history, and to our landscape. So um, yeah, this is just really exciting to me. All right, so uh, in the interest of time, I'm going to stay focused, and I would I would say, if you had, let's keep it to 5 tips, right? So the scenario is, um, your mother or grandmother or uncle, etc., aunt has been diagnosed with say prostate cancer or some type of a cancer.
Okay.
And we are trying to figure out how to proceed to best advocate with the best chances of survival and to overcome these situations. What are some of the questions or steps we should take as we go through these processes?
Okay. So whether it is your grandfather with prostate cancer or your grandmother or your mother with ovarian cancer, what we want you to do is to remember that your physician works with you as a partner. Many people think back to the days where medicine was paternalistic, and what the physician said is what actually goes. We're living in a little bit of a different era now, and I'm
Mhm.
not telling you to go to quote unquote Dr. Google and to challenge your physician on every single thing, but to go with an open mind and to select your physician in a way that aligns with the way you live. So if you have a physician who is wanting to be very aggressive with surgery, just remember that a second opinion is not an insult. That is just proper protocol. And you ask, do you have a differential diagnosis? Do you have anyone that you might recommend that I see for a second opinion? Or would you mind bringing in some of your colleagues for you guys to have a round table? My case seems to be rather complex, or maybe it is a simple case, but I would like to have some other collaboration. The second thing I would say is to have a notebook and take it with you. I have Professor McKellar's bio diary that is being revised, but you don't have to have my book, just a simple book from the dollar store that you can read articles, you can take your questions in. Number three, take a family member or a friend, a trusted person with you, especially if that person has been in healthcare. That is a great resource. The fourth tip that I would say, show up prepared, show up on time. If they ask you to bring your list of medications, do that. Don't be a poor historian. go back and reread your notes. And when I think of the Professor McKellar's bio diary, when sometimes we're interviewing patients and we say, well, how long has this persisted? As a researcher, I'm always amazed when people say, it's only been going on about 6 weeks, when in actuality, it's been about 6 months. Because sometimes we all get so busy with work that we lose a concept of time.
Yeah.
And finally, be an active participant in your own health. There are many diseases that can be prevented, and ask about what a great diet is for you to have with your various conditions. And I say that because a heart smart diet can be a little bit different than the kidney diet. So you want to make
Mm,
sure that you're not doing conflicting
mm.
actions as it relates to your health. Be in partnership with your physician for sure. And that's whether a nurse practitioner you may be seeing from time to time, because in Pennsylvania alone, there's a shortage of physicians. So there usually,
Mm.
when you think of per capita in PA, there's about one physician for every 100,000 residents. So you hear people say, well, the nurse
Really?
practitioners are trying to take over
Yeah.
um, physician's job. And from my viewpoint, being in medical academia, that's not the case at all.
Mm.
However, there are some internal conflicts that we have going on in the healthcare system with salaries and all of that. Physicians have to supervise and oversee everyone. So they definitely have some valid concerns. But I will say that in medical schools, there are 40,000 people every year that apply for about 18 or 19,000 seats. So again,
Mm.
we have some bottleneck issues there. After COVID-19, you have a lot of clinicians who are doing desk jobs. We're teaching online. We're not running labs. So there are many different things. The millennials have a different type of work ethic sometimes. You might see them take a 1 year sabbatical and go get an MBA, whereas people went straight to medical school and straight to residency and straight to practice and didn't take that time. But then you run the risk of burnout. So there are many multi-layered answers are rarely just black and white or very simple. There's a lot of gray area, and there are
Mm.
a lot of multifocal and multi-layered issues in the healthcare system.
Yeah, it has been interesting. Do you, okay, so sometimes, when you're selecting a physician or even just getting an appointment, which is very hard, you could be looking at 3 to 6 months before you're able to see your physician. Which is very daunting, especially. So when they offer you, my initial reaction when they would say, oh, well, the nurse practitioner can see you, but your doctor won't be available to such and such a time. And initially, I'll be honest, I was like, oh, I'll wait for my doctor. But I'm understanding more and more that sometimes the urgency just makes it, you don't have a choice. But also, when I think about nurses and their knowledge, right? And I think about how often, even though the doctor is the face, you see, they're the ones that come to you and say, do this or do that, here, and
Mhm.
they give you the instructions. So, would you encourage people to not feel an obligation to wait for a physician versus a nurse practitioner? What are the limitations of the nurse practitioner's position?
Everyone has a different scope of practice. As I said, your physician is going to be your primary person who is spearheading your care. But if someone is having a heart attack, you don't want to say, well, I'm just going to wait for my physician, when the nurse practitioner, the cardiac tech, the secretary, anybody can give you CPR. So there are different roles for different things. You have nurse practitioners who are emergency room nurse practitioners. Many of them have, my mother has a doctorate degree in her field. They have either a PhD or a doctor of nursing practice. Many of the advanced practice nurses in the ER, they may have been surgical techs or first assistants at somewhere along the way. So in an emergency situation, they can certainly keep you alive. But you want to go to the specialist. You don't want to go to the cardiothoracic surgeon when you need to be seeing an oncologist. So it's the right tool for the right time, the right resource.
Hmm. Okay.
And just the one thing that we have with the campus of care that is an ongoing, we're moving to be a massive digital resource. We have now done Dallas, we have done Houston, we have done Detroit. So we have the psychologists and the psychiatrists there in Detroit and Dallas and Houston. We have the OBGYN, but there's so many different specialties that this is grueling work. And we are a team of about 16 people. So we have great and lofty work to do. The Bible says the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. So, yes, we do have to help each other to have these databases so that you get the right people. Philadelphia is a great place with 13 big name schools and medical schools. The
Mhm.
only other place like Philadelphia in the country would be Boston, and Miami is quickly becoming a hub for medical education. But then you have the people that are an hour or two outside of Dallas that are in these rural areas and they don't have that access. So, being close to a level one trauma center, I'm partial to teaching hospitals because that's where I was educated. And we know that they have the cutting edge technology.
Hmm. Um, okay, so another thing, his name is escaping right now, but I will add it in. He is actually out of Texas. I believe it's Dallas area. But he has kind of transformed the whole prevalence of Black women with recurring fibroid issues. And he
Wonderful.
has, a young Black doctor, has taken it upon himself to he almost guarantees the procedures he does for removing fibroids have been to make sure they don't come back because that's where he said he has encountered, the most complications and risks for Black women in particular. And so now people are, so I'm just thinking, I've heard some other things about Texas that in terms of medical care, that people are flying there to get procedures done because of his thoroughness and
I
success
I
with,
think I know who you are talking about as well in DeSoto. He's right around the corner
okay,
from
okay.
Central Point Church of Christ, as well as not too far from Friendship West. It's the
Hmm.
Dallas, it's the Fibroid Surgery Center.
Mm,
And fibroids are kind of tricky.
okay.
We still don't understand why Black women have fibroids more than any other group, but fibroid placement from an anatomic standpoint, when we are in labs and we're working with cadavers and you're able to get into that cavity, that uterine cavity, and to be able to see that there are some fibroids that are outside the uterus. There are some that are embedded in the actual uterus, which is a muscle. There are some that are inside the uterus. Fibroids are quite fascinating
Yeah.
and
And
cause us a lot of
again,
problem, a lot of bleeding and a lot of cramping and pain.
yeah, that could also be definitely its own whole episode or that we could delve deeper into. So I will table that one as well.
Um,
Um, Aside from the fibroids, just some last couple of questions. Oh, well, first let me just say, is there anything within your work or within this session that you feel you would like to share that maybe I haven't covered or touched on in particular?
The
And if
main thing I
not,
just
it's
want to
fine.
reiterate is us becoming more digital service. In the pandemic, we started our podcast and we started our maternal fetal voice magazine because there was so much misinformation online. And I will say that public health is under attack. When you look at the people who are Secretary of Health, you look at people who do not respect science, who may have never taken a science course
Mhm.
being in the highest, some of the highest seats of power. Please support local organizations like ours so that we can make sure the work is continuing to be done.
Yes. Well, we really appreciate your time,
Thank
Professor
you.
McKellar, and we are grateful for the work that you are doing bringing the information to the forefront, and helping us to empower ourselves because we know whatever's going on in the country, in the world today, unrest, we have to be able to take care of ourselves. So I always try to reiterate that. Make time for self-care because if you
Yeah.
don't, it will make you make time, or your time may run out. So, thank you for the tips. I definitely want to reiterate, we talked about how to advocate for yourself as a patient. You want to make sure that you are getting a second opinion, that you are looking at your relationship with your physician as a partnership, meaning you are active in this process of learning. You're keeping a notebook. You want to make sure you're doing the research you can for yourself. You know, whether that is Googling information, finding articles to read, to at least have a baseline of information so that you can ask the right questions when you are with meeting with those medical practitioners. Also, you want to have some support. So you want to find a family member or a friend, someone that you trust, just to be there. Sometimes they're great at asking questions. Sometimes they're just great at holding your hand and letting other people know that you have a support system, which is very important. And then you want to show up prepared. You want to be on time. You want to have the list of medications. You want to have the information that's going to help inform the physician so that he or she is going to be able to give you the best instructions possible, but they have to have knowledge in order to do that effectively. And then finally, again, be an active participant in your own health. If you know you have particular issue, you want to make sure your diet is aligned with that. There are nutritionists, people that have spent their whole careers just understanding food science and how that works with your body. So go to the experts. They're there for our help and assistance. And so we want to make sure we're doing our best. We want to eat well. We want to be moving, and that doesn't mean getting an expensive gym membership. It could just mean going for a walk every day,
Taking a
enjoying
walk.
some
Yes.
sunshine, having an opportunity to let your body relax, let your body recharge. You want to make sure you're getting enough sleep. And if you need assistance in terms of handling life's challenges, then you know there are lots of very some free or very affordable psychological supports that are out there as well. So we want to take care of our whole selves, and we want to be in community and just know that there are lots of people out here who want to be in partnership, who want to ensure our survival and our thriving.
Yeah.
And as always, it is a pleasure to the wealth of knowledge is just
Thank you.
impressive, appreciated, and well respected. So thank you, Dr. McKellar, and thank you
Thank
everyone
you.
for listening today. We hope this has been a help to you. Please share your questions, comments, in the comments section, and we will return again with more tips for our health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.